UPod Street is an official affiliate of Birdland Sports. Visit birdlandsports.com/UPodStreet, and 10% of your order will go directly to supporting the pod. Use code UPodStreet at checkout, and you'll get 10% taken off your order. Now sit back, relax, and keep that beer cold, because it's on to UPod Street. What is up, Birdland? Welcome back to UPod Street. It's been a long time away from the show. Last time we spoke to you all, Jack and I sat here with a lot of high hopes and positivity and good vibes of going into the first playoff series that the Orioles had in several years, and that all came crashing and burning to a very disappointing end. And Jack, I don't think you and I really had the heart to go on after that. But here we are, new season. Boys are back in spring training camp. So as always, I am your co-host, Jimmy Horn. And joining me is the brunette Thor himself, Jack Bain.
Man. It's funny, like you take enough time off from something, you forget some of the little stuff. But it's good to be back. Good to be back. Really exciting time in Orioles baseball. A lot happened over the last couple months. Got a good amount of stuff to talk about.
Did anything happen? I thought so little happened. We were gonna have a very quick show, Jack. I thought we would have so little to talk about that we were gonna be stuck here for a little bit trying to come up with things to talk about.
Yeah, change of ownership. Some guy named Corbin Burns.
Yeah. Oh, so you're telling me that there is Orioles news to talk about this offseason?
Just a little bit.
Well, okay. Well, then why don't we just go ahead and skip the small talk and let's dive right into it then. Going off a little bit what we talked about, but of course we got something that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is that first and foremost, the big news that came out this offseason is that the Orioles have a new lease with Camden Yards. It was signed just in 2 weeks prior to the deadline, which was the end of the calendar year. On December 18th, it was announced that the Orioles signed a 30-year deal to stay at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, and they received $600 million from the state of Maryland to go towards stadium improvements. Jack, what was your first thought when you heard the news of an extended lease?
I mean, the theatrics of the whole weird lease agreement in the months leading up to December were just it was just tired, right? So when it finally happened, it was just kind of a sense of relief. I think the people in the government and the city authority finally could come to an agreement. 30 years is encouraging with a $600 million increase in funds for the stadium. So hopefully some new speakers would be nice. Just start there, and we'll move on to the bigger stuff from there. But I mean, all the plans surrounding M&T Bank stadiums, rebuild, kind of new agreement, whatever. That seems really promising and seems really cool. I was in M&T Bank Stadium more than ever this year. And obviously it was time for some upgrades. And I think the same could be said about Oriole Park. Hopefully they have kind of a similar layout to what the Ravens are doing.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jack. Just a feeling of relief. I mean, you and I were both there the night that the Orioles clinched the division. Yeah. And they made this big show of the governor being there and announcing we've reached an agreement for 30 more years at Camden Yards. And then the next day it was revealed oh, they didn't actually sign a lease. Yeah. They signed a memorandum of understanding. And you're what does that even mean?
Whatever, man.
And then, all off season, it was just this Well, the state of Maryland has made an offer, and the Orioles have turned it down, and now they're renegotiating, and now they made another offer, and they've turned it down. And it just felt like all these theatrics. It was a typical Angelos move of like, let me make it about myself more than anything. It felt like, I never thought the Nashville Orioles was ever going to be a thing, but the more and more it dragged on, and the more and more it was like, hey, the Orioles might have
Yeah,
to do a temporary lease and all this stuff. The more I was
yeah,
like, could the Nashville Orioles happen? And I'm happy it happened. I mean, with a 30-year lease, the Orioles will be here up into their 100th season in Baltimore, which is a crazy great agreement, I think. Something really crazy to think about is like, oh wow, 100 years of Orioles baseball, and they will be celebrating that inside Camden Yards. I agree with you. First things first, fix those speakers. I think second thing, uh, do something about the video board. I think it was an eye-opening thing for me. I don't go to a lot of the different MLB stadiums. I'd like to, but last year I got my first experience going out there to the Guardian Stadium and seeing their video board and going like, oh, this is what it's like to see a video board and not have to squint to read all the stats and everything like
you
that.
have problems with the video board?
Oh my god, yeah. Are you
Really?
kidding me? I can't read it worth a crap. Like, I have friends who go with me and they're like, "Where is the actual score?" And I have to be like, "Okay, so look right there. You see that tiny little box at the end of the 9? That's where the score is, and then next to it is the hit." And like, it's just a really small video board, especially compared to what almost all stadiums have these days. Um, so just get a bigger scoreboard.
Whatever.
Um
Whatever, old man.
I don't think it's just me. I know a lot of people complain about it. I think they can get a bigger one that doesn't block the view. But, you know, little improvements. We'll talk about it throughout the year of little things they can improve. I mean, we'll probably go to enough games this year that we'll find something else to complain about. I could list off a laundry list of improvements to the stadium. Not that Camden Yards is a bad stadium, because it's not. I'm happy the Orioles are still going to be there. I just think it's showing its age, because 31 years old is really old, as all of us born in 1992 uh, would like to say, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I like it just kind of needs like a facelift, right? Like the stadium itself. I mean, I think it looks great as is, and I think it would still look great as is for the next 10 years. Um, times are changing, things are getting newer. Just time for a little something.
And I will say this, I never disagreed with Angelos's idea of like, let's build up the area around Camden Yards as well. He didn't get his wish of removing the parking lots between Camden Yards and M&T Bank Stadium, and he never was going to.
That
You
was
were
a
never
little
going to lose the parking, because
that
where were
was a
people
little
going to park?
yeah.
Especially that it's connected to M&T Bank Stadium, and tailgating is such a
Yeah.
inherent part of NFL games. Like, he was never going to get that. But I think you have enough space around the Camden Yards complex that you can still be creative and build up, structures in the area that surrounds Camden Yards to build up this idea of having more bars and restaurants and clubs and things, and make it, a place to go
Yeah.
before the games and stuff.
It's just
But
so funny,
Jack,
like the area, like Federal Hill and like the surrounding area right there. I mean, that's all people want, right there. I
Mhm.
think it's just like finding it.
Well, yeah, and let's face it, Pickles Pub is not exactly struggling,
No,
and
absolutely not.
yeah, that's I love to see the crowds at Pickles again. Like, during some of those dark years recently, it was pretty easy to get into Pickles and get a beer right away. Now it's wall to wall people, which
Yeah.
is nice to see again. We hadn't had that for a while. But the thing is, Jack, interestingly enough, Angelos got this deal done. His vision for getting money to build up the area around Camden Yards was completed. And wouldn't you know it, just about a month later, suddenly he was no longer the owner of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So the Orioles get sold to a ownership group that was headlined by a gentleman by the name of David Rubenstein. for a total of $1.7 billion. Jack, what was your first thought when you saw the news that the Orioles had been sold?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're really happy about it. I was kind of surprised at how low the price was, to be honest. Seeing that the Commanders went for more was, I mean, football is a different market, whatever. Still kind of crazy. This deal is still pending. Actually, it's still being reviewed by the MLB, which is fine. It'll go through. I mean, this is good for baseball, not just Baltimore. So, um, but yeah, I mean, the guy that literally bought the Magna Carta, buying the Baltimore Orioles, I like it. I like it a lot. It means he's got a lot of money to play with. So hopefully, that'll lead to more stadium improvements. But more importantly, player signings and player improvements. So hopefully some of these young guys will start getting locked up. Some guy that we traded for just recently, maybe he'll get locked up after this year, or even before the end of the year. But yeah, he's got a great resume. Got a lot of hands in a lot of different things that make a lot of money. So, but it's a group investment, so there's a couple different names on there, right?
Yeah, I mean David Rubenstein is just the main guy. The second in charge of this is a guy by the name of Michael Argetti, another billionaire, co-founder of an investment firm and stuff like that. Uh, so you have two billionaires leading the group, and then you have a group of minority ownership. And some of the highlights from that is Grant Hill, former NBA legend who has ties to Baltimore. I believe it's his dad is originally from Baltimore. Michael Bloomberg, former New York mayor, one of the richest guys in the world. And then some guy, Jack, I don't know if you've heard of him, named Calvin Ripken Jr.
Yeah, and I'm actually really stoked that he's a part of the ownership group because you can put a lot of really rich people together, and we've seen that happen. With the Mets, you just sign everybody. It's not really how this league works. We'll see how it works for the Dodgers this year. But having a baseball mind up in the ownership office, I think is gonna work really well. Whether that's the plan or not, to have him be a part of a lot of the money allocation, telling Elias where to put it. Whether he's a part of that, I don't know. I feel like it can't hurt to have him on the ownership council. But yeah, really excited that it is a group. We got a lot of minds that can put all of their business entrepreneurial knowledge to the topic of baseball, and we'll see what happens. I'm very, very hopeful, though. Very hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps too that one of my biggest thing with David Rubenstein, besides the fact that he is filthy stinking rich, is the fact that he is from Baltimore.
Yeah,
He's a local guy, and I think that was the biggest thing. The Angelos family was not local. They kind of came in and bought the team because they had come into all this money and they just wanted something to buy. They threw money at it for a little bit, and then when things didn't work out, they're like, well, this investment's not working out, so we'll just have it and we won't really invest in it, right? um, and the fact that you have a local guy buying the team right there sends a huge message. But then to add to the minority ownership, to add, with the passing of Brooks, the baton of Mr. Oriole has basically been passed to Cal Ripken. I mean,
absolutely.
uh, so you have a guy. You're sending a message by having that sort of ownership of, hey, 30 more years in Baltimore, and guess what? It's probably going to go beyond 30 more years in Baltimore, right? And that's what really, really excites me, is that it doesn't seem like it's just about owning a team to own a team. It's to own a team and bring the city and the team back to those glory days.
Yeah,
I think too, um, I really loved watching the reaction from fans from around the league to the
yeah,
Orioles being sold.
yeah.
I loved there was a tweet from a Tampa Bay Rays Twitter where they posted it and they said, "Hey, this is awesome for Orioles fans. Dot dot dot. By the way, Rays fans, it's over." Because I mean, here's the thing. Because the Angelos family spent money the way they spent money, which was basically not at all,
Yeah,
you had to get all these creative ways to build up good teams. I mean, first we did Moneyball, and we had a couple successful years with Moneyball, and then that fell flat on its face when the rest of the team adjusted to it, and then it never worked again. And then you had to bring in Mike Elias to do Astro Ball, and you did all this tanking and drafting and everything like that. Just these, you have to do all these creative ways to get around the fact that your owner is unwilling to spend money. Well, now you have the number one farm system in baseball, and that's awesome. But you still have to, in order to be successful with that, you still have to supplement the team with long-term contracts to guys that are really good. You have to bring in other big players and whatnot. And it didn't seem like Angelos was willing to do that. I mean, when he talked last year, this time last year, he was at spring training. And instead of saying, well, I want to be the Astros, I want to be in running for a World Series every single year, it was, well, I want to be the Tampa Bay Rays. They always have good guys coming up in their farm system. I want to be the Cleveland Guardians. They always have good guys coming up through their farm system. The last time either of those teams won a World Series was what, 1933?
Yeah.
Rays have never won it. Guardians, when they were the Indians, won it in 1933, I think was the last time. I mean, it didn't make any sense. So now you have the number one farm system in baseball and an ownership that could potentially be willing to spend a lot of money to supplement that. That turns into something that is scary good. That is something that we've seen the Dodgers be doing. The Dodgers they're usually top 5 in their farm system rankings, yet here they are spending a ton of money getting really good players, and they look scary good. We'll talk about that probably another episode this spring training, what all's happening around the league. But it turns into a Goliath of a team as opposed to just a team that is really good. I'm hopeful. I think we have seen what the bottom of the barrel of ownership is.
Yeah.
And so the bar is really low for these guys. Just put minimal effort towards making this team better.
Yeah.
And you're already better owners than Angelos will be.
I think last point on this, and then we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
But having a ownership that's going to be willing to spend money, and then having just the baseball minds of our front office and Mike Elias and Sig, I think it's going to be a really, really good combination of having hometown owners, right? Really, really good baseball minds who have been there before, and finding those kind of like in between the margins kind of moves that'll make this team like 100% like in a World Series contending team. It's not going to be signing that big guy, right? Like obviously this past off season, we saw the Dodgers load up on every single free agent that they could get their hands on. The Orioles, they're not going to do that, right? Because it just doesn't work. I mean, look at the Astros World Series teams from the late 2010s. Like how much of that team was homegrown? Close to all of it. So with some supporting cast guys, which right now, like the Orioles, mostly homegrown. They just got to find that supporting cast.
Yeah. And you know what, Jack? That leads us right into our next point, because 2 days after this sale, in what I called possibly the greatest 48 hours in Orioles history, suddenly news broke that the Orioles made a trade. We had been talking about it for years, Jack. We've got all this young talent. We've got such a plethora of players in the minor leagues that are really, really good prospects, and not enough space on the major league team. At some point, a trade has to happen. And wouldn't you know it, the Orioles go out, they get a bona fide ace in Corbin Burns, a starting pitcher from the Milwaukee Brewers, right-handed pitcher, former Cy Young Award winner, ranked by most people as being a top 5 pitcher in baseball. I've seen some people rank him as a top 2 pitcher in baseball. An absolute monster bombshell trade. And then to trade to get Corbin Burns, we gave away 2 prospects. We gave away Joey Ortiz, a major league ready shortstop. And then we gave away the biggest piece, in my opinion, was DL Hall, pitcher for the Orioles, one of their top pitching prospects in recent years. And then we also gave away, I believe it was our competitive balance pick.
Yeah.
I think it was like 34th overall draft pick to the Milwaukee Brewers. So Jack,
the first round.
what is your reaction to all of that?
I mean, when I saw the news break, like I think I was at I was at McDaniel practice, right? We were inside. I had my watch on as soon as it popped up. It was just like disbelief, like jumping around. I didn't even care who the return was because Corbin Burns is just that good. Like anybody without the name Jackson Holiday in the farm system would have been worth it for Corbin Burns. Last year, Burns over 193 innings, struck out just over 9 per 9, walked 3 per 9, which is a little high. But this was considered like a down year for him, with just under a 3.4 ERA. I mean, I mean, think about like our rotation last year, right? Bradish and Rodriguez were the headliners, and now you add another guy who's been there, been doing it since 2018 with a 3.4. I mean, obviously we'll get into it later. It sucks that Bradish is hurt, because this rotation would have been absolutely lethal. But like, obviously, reaction, great move. Honestly, a great move for both sides. The Brewers had an expiring Corbin Burns contract that, I mean, they're contenders, but they're not like the real deal. And they get a guy who's going to plug in right into their infield, as well as a guy who's going to plug in maybe in their rotation, but obviously right into that back end of the bullpen. A lot of high praise from around the baseball world on DL Hall, making a big resurgence. So it does stink to make him, or to see him go. Joey Ortiz was never going to see the field in Baltimore. So good luck to you in Milwaukee, Joey. Hope you thrive there. But overall, like, given this, if I were to give this trade a grade, I'm giving it an A minus, somewhere in that realm. Yeah, again, just balanced on both sides. Both teams get big things that they need. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard the news, I was sitting next to Ashley watching TV, and for the second day in the span of like 3 days, I started like smacking her shoulder, going like, oh my god!" And she's like, "What?" I was like, "They traded for Corbin Burns." She's like, "What does that mean?" It was hugely exciting. I did start to go, "Oh no, who did we give up for this?"
Yeah.
We get so attached to these guys, especially in those down years where we didn't really have anything to look forward to in the major league level.
Yeah.
So you get so kind of attached to these guys growing up through the Orioles farm system that you get a little worried. Joey Ortiz, like you said, great player, great guy, major league ready shortstop talent, but he had about 3 guys ahead of him in the organization. So you're right. He was never going to see the field in Camden Yards on a regular basis. And so for Milwaukee, who was already sitting there saying, "Hey, we're still looking for a shortstop," there you go. You got a major league ready shortstop.
Yeah.
DL Hall, I will say, I was incredibly surprised to see him go. And the only reason is I feel like the biggest hole in the Orioles farm system is we don't have a ton of pitching talent. But you have to figure, if you're going to give up an ace, you're going to want some sort of return to help you with your pitching, because that's a big gap you got to fill. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think DL Hall had made it very clear that he wants to be a starter. And I think it was becoming clearer and clearer that in the Orioles organization, that was becoming less likely.
He's just so good out of the bullpen, man.
He is great out of the bullpen. He can pitch so hard that you kind of want him to come out of the bullpen, giving it all for 1 inning, as opposed to trying to spread it out over 6.
Yeah.
And I wish him the best, because I loved watching him too. He's a great player. I wish him all the success in Milwaukee, except when he's playing Baltimore. By the way, we play Milwaukee in the month of April, in our first month, and I guarantee you it is going to work out that DL Hall is going to start a game against the Orioles, and he is going to shove. He is absolutely going to shove, and all of Orioles Twitter is going to freak out and say, "See, we never should have traded DL Hall away." It's going.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody kind of took that trade pretty well. Like, the community as a whole was just like, yeah, sucks to see him go. He was an Oriole. Like, he was an Orioles guy. But like, this is what it took to get this trade done, and I think like this is going to be the first domino to fall in a long string of the Orioles kind of bucking up and making some moves if they're serious about this thing. Um, so yeah, I think everybody kind of had a really good understanding about what was going on, um, what the situation we were in, and I mean to get a guy who is not long removed from a Cy Young season where he struck out over 12 guys per
Mhm.
nine,
And I'll say this too. This is an underrated part of the trade package. So that competitive balance pick. If Corbin Burns does not re-sign with the Orioles get that pick back next year.
yeah,
So they
and
get
that
that
might be a part of the thinking is that if they can't re-sign him, hey, at least we're getting that pick back. But I mean, dude, I hope they re-sign him. I mean,
I
I
would
know
love it.
he's definitely going to want to test his value, which is totally fair. Like, get your
Well,
bag.
he's a Scott Boras guy. He's a
Yeah,
Scott Boras agent. Like which the good news is with new ownership, it's no longer out of the realm of possibility that he may re-sign with the Orioles.
yeah,
Under the Angelos regime, zero chance.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I sort of feel like with this, Jack, Mike Elias came out and said, well, we've been working on this since November. Angelos has been part of that conversation, so give him some credit, all that stuff. I can't help but think that the timing had a lot to do with this trade. And the reason why is I feel like Mike Elias was really hesitant with trading his prospects away under an ownership that he knew was unwilling to spend money.
Oh yeah,
And so the only thing you had was organizational depth. And so to trade away that organizational depth when knowing you're not going to be able to spend money to bring
yeah,
other guys in, I think that was just too big of a risk for him to take. Now you get new ownership that's willing to spend money, and he's much more open to trading prospects away. And that's exactly what this was. It was, we've got more prospects than we can know what to do with. Let's go get an ace, trading away two guys and a draft pick. Hey, after that deal was done, rankings came out. Guess what? The Orioles are still the number one farm system in
yeah.
baseball. Um,
I think that's a really good point too. Like honestly, that was something I didn't think about. But this the deal of the Orioles being sold was happening months in advance before it actually came out public. So you got to think that when Elias was talking to the Brewers about what would it take, right? You got to think he
mhm.
had that security of giving those prospects away.
Well, and that was the thing too. Like you said, it's been discussed for months. We had in December, we had reports coming out like, oh,
Yeah,
David Rubenstein might buy the team. What's going on with this? And I had to laugh when the state of Maryland came out and said, like, oh, we feel bamboozled because Angelos told us he was never going to sell the team. And then he sold the team. I had to laugh because you were reading these reports. David Rubenstein might buy the team. State of Maryland makes offer on lease.
yeah,
David Rubenstein and John Angelos meet. Orioles turn down lease offer. State of Maryland makes another lease offer. John Angelos and David Rubenstein meet. Orioles turn down lease offer. You could tell what was happening, and that
yeah,
was John Angelos was being the middleman, bringing the lease to David Rubenstein, saying, "Hey, if I sign this lease, are you still going to buy the team?" And was negotiating from there. Like from the outside, I could see that.
yeah,
You're telling me that the folks actually making the deal didn't understand that's what was happening? Like, come on. Um, but I think Elias now feels the weights of the Angelos family like lifting off of him, and now he is truly. I mean, speaking of lifting off, this is truly liftoff, right?
yeah,
That
absolutely.
quote from 2 years ago now is coming to fruition of like, okay, now we can actually do what the plan is. I don't think this is the last. I think there's a lot of guys that are really good, but aren't quite going to make this Orioles team because we have so many good guys. Taryn Vavra, Kyle Stowers. These are guys that are good players and in any organization would be top 15, top 20 prospects easy. But in the Orioles organization, they're never going to see the field as starters once again.
Yeah,
And I'm saying that because they've come up a little bit, that sort of thing. So look out for that. And you and I warned people of this last year around the same time. We said, do not get too close to these guys because at some point a trade's going to have to happen.
yeah,
And now we're seeing it. Unless your name is Jackson Holiday or maybe Samuel Basayo, um, you might be on the hot seat for
Mhm.
getting traded. And
Yeah.
that's the reality situation. But as long as it's making the team better, I'm all for it. Let's go.
If news broke that the Orioles made a trade tomorrow, who do you think it is? Who do you think we acquired? Doesn't matter what the return is.
Uh, Given the recent injury news, I would say Jesus Luzardo.
Luzardo, not Cease.
I think the White Sox are playing too big of a hand on
Yeah.
Cease.
I like
I,
Luzardo. Luzardo would be cool.
I think Luzardo would be a good trade. Honestly, I
Be a
think
good
he would
fit.
fit in well with the team. I just think the White Sox are asking way too much, and I could tell last year around the trade deadline, because I went to that event where there was a meet and greet with Mike Elias. It was like a week after the trade deadline, and you could kind of tell that like people were like, "So how many people were asking about Jackson Holiday?" And he was like, about 29 teams." You know, like I mean that, and I can't blame Mike Elias for not making a better trade than Jack Flaherty last year because
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I answer the phone and the first word out of your mouth is Jackson Holiday, I'm hanging up
Yeah.
the phone right away. I'm not even listening to what
Yeah.
you're going to try and trade.
And honestly,
Um,
it's kind of like I'm kind of glad that we didn't make a big splash. Like, I mean, it's easy to say now, right? We got swept in the ALDS, but that was a hot Rangers team that obviously won the World Series. So if we would have made like a big splash, lost a couple of prospects on a learning year, it would have been like we would have been kicking ourselves. But again, very, very easy to say on February 20th, 2024.
and I'll say this, we gave up two prospects that were not in our. I don't think they were in our top 10 even. Um,
Ortiz, I think, was 8.
Eighth. Okay. So not even in our top seven. Not
Yeah.
our top seven prospects. We got a guy who, quite frankly, has better numbers than Dylan Cease. Um,
Yeah.
would I be happy if the Orioles got Dylan Cease? Sure. But I think that based on the trade that we got Corbin Burns, I think the White Sox are asking for even more than that. And to me,
Yeah.
it's just not worth it. I think the only thing that makes that price go up is the fact that you have an extra year of control on Cease
Yeah.
versus Burns.
Absolutely.
But you know, I think there's other better options out there than Dylan Cease right now, based on what the asking price is. And
Yeah.
jokes on you, White Sox, you priced yourself out of contention. Honestly,
I mean, they're about to blow it up too. Like
oh,
at some point,
absolutely,
they're gonna have to like lower the sights because I mean, what's left, right? I mean, they got Robert, Cease, and XYZ. I mean, they're gonna have to blow it up soon, man. And Cease is like they can't miss out on that. Like they can't let him walk.
yeah. It's you know, I I I think they kept saying the word holiday to Mike
Yeah,
Elias, and Mike
probably.
Elias kept saying, "Absolutely not,
Yeah, and after
absolutely
last
not."
year, after what Cease did last year and what Holiday's doing now, it's not worth it.
No, no. Actually, anything for holiday right now, I think is not worth it unless the name is Otani. Like, and you're certainly not getting that now, not after his deal.
Yeah.
No way.
So the Orioles'
Um,
other big free agent signing, by big I mean they netted over $10 million. Craig Kimbrell. There's a lot to unpack here.
mhm.
A lot to unpack. Kimbrell last year with the Phillies, 69 innings with a 3.26 ERA. His big bugaboo last year was the long ball. 14% of fly balls were home runs. Was giving up just over a homer per 9 innings, which is not good if you're a reliever. Not his worst, though. In 2019, he gave up almost 4 home runs per 9 innings. A little hurt, but I think that this is not what the Orioles needed. I'm going to start there that this was not what the Orioles needed. I think there was a lot of other options that were fine to replace Bautista with. But, if this is what we're going with, just to shine some positive light on the situation, he had a much better year than he did with the Dodgers, was striking out more guys, was just less runs were being created off of him. His batting average on balls in play went down almost 70%, which I think is big. He's projected next year to really, really regress, and this is per Fangraphs. Their steamer projections. They got him kind of seeing his ERA inflate a little bit. projections are hard. Projections are hard. I think the
I
way to look at this, right, is like it's not my money. Use him correctly and like kind of shelter him from high stress situations. Like, I mean, I'm talking, 2-run, 3-run leads, get him a save here and there. Kind of use him and Cano as you can even throw Perez in there, as a lefty, to kind of share the load of saves. Maybe add another guy, get some more saves in there. Overall, I give it a C+.
Yeah, so I, like everybody else, kind of when they signed him, I was like,
Yeah.
really? And then everyone's kind of like, oh, he shouldn't be our closer. When I was like, well, there's nothing saying he has to be our closer, right? Like he can
Yeah.
still be just a bullpen arm, and he's a better option than Keegan Aiken, let's say,
Oh, God.
or Joey Crable, or guys like that. Like, so it's like, oh, okay, he's he'll at least buff up our bullpen a little bit. And then they came out like, yeah, he's going to be our closer, and I was like, okay, I guess. I'll say that it was a very Orioles move. When I saw it, I was like, okay, that's pretty typical. It is a 1-year deal, so you're basically saying, hey, come in, bridge the gap for us until
Yeah.
Bautista's back. I'm
And there's
fine
a
with that.
there's a club option for next year as well.
Yeah. So if he comes in and performs better than expected, then yeah, maybe you do sign him to a second year and have him be a setup guy for Bautista or something like that. I think what will help him is he is I was gonna say that he's a lefty, but he's not, is he? He's a
No,
righty.
he's not.
Okay, so the dimensions of Camden Yards do not help him.
No.
Um, unfortunately.
I mean, the dimensions is like, you got a lot of lefty bats in the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably going to hurt him a little bit. But if you're going for righty on right matchup, it'll help him a little bit. I would expect his long ball rate to go down
Mhm.
at least a little bit just from pitching in Camden Yards. It's a huge park out there and left. Coming from Citizens Bank, which is a bit more friendly of an environment for power guys who are going down the lines. Yeah, I mean, very Orioles move. I agree. Very
Yeah,
Orioles move.
I will say one bit of hope is I forget who tweeted it out, but someone showed the rankings of stuff for relief pitchers last year, and Craig Kimbrell was actually at the top for
Yeah.
stuff. So he's got good pitches, and I think one thing we've had in recent years that we haven't had in Orioles history for a long time is we have faith in our pitching academy
Yeah.
to work with him and hopefully help him improve. I have faith that the Orioles pitching staff can help him improve. So I think a C is a
Yeah.
good grade for it.
He's just 35 years old.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically telling him that, hey, this is your last year. Give it us your all, right?
Yeah, give it a shot.
Throw your arm into oblivion by the end of the year, right? Just get us to the end. I think before the injury news, I was still hopeful because with the addition of Dylan Tate coming back,
Yeah.
Theoretically based on the rotation, like Tyler Wells was probably going to be in the bullpen, and I think Tyler Wells, because he wore out last year, he was just a better bullpen arm than he was a starter. Cole Irvin as a long reliever, like you had a lot of options in that bullpen before the injury news that we're going to get to in a little bit, that I said I still have faith that this team has improved. I mean, let's face it, you were never going to get a closer that's as good as Felix Bautista. He was the best closer, the best reliever in all of baseball last year. There was 0% chance that you're going to get someone as good as that. You got a guy that has 15 years experience in Major League Baseball.
13.
Okay. 13-year experience in Major League Baseball. He'll get his 14th this year. He's been there.
Yeah, very done. And he's got postseason experience.
Exactly. Is it good postseason experience? For the most part, not. But
Yeah.
he has been there. He can be, that veteran presence that the Orioles had. That in the past, the veteran presence has been Kyle Gibson and guys like that, right? So here you go. You got another veteran pitcher. I you know, it makes sense. It was a move that was this makes sense.
I think at the very least he'll stay healthy.
Yes,
He'll stay
absolutely.
healthy for the most part. Only missed extended periods of time in 2019 when he was with the Cubs. Other than that, he's gotten at least 50 innings, almost
And
60 innings.
I'll say this, Jack. Are you prepared to see the entire bird bath stick their arms out like this before each
Oh
pitch?
yeah, I kind of forgot he did that.
I
Good
think
for
that'll
him.
be a cool view. Everyone in center field going like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
No, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Honestly, I feel like that's all we can say right now. It's like, let's see
yeah,
how it goes. Let's give it a shot. Be a bit optimistic. Like that's our second biggest offseason move of the year.
yeah,
Let's see if it pans out. Um, so yeah, let's see how the other acquisitions do as well. Perhaps.
yeah. So let's go through these pretty quickly. These are small time deals. Most of these guys get traded for cash considerations and
Almost
whatnot,
all of
but
them.
uh poor cash considerations, man. He just keeps getting
Yeah,
removed from the organization.
yeah.
I don't even see him come back half the time.
The one off
Uh
the top I want to start with is Matt Krug. I think he's
mhm.
got the most promise. He's a 28-year-old prospect with the Yankees. Pitched really well in AAA last year. Pitched really well in AAA. Kept the ERA under 3 out of the bullpen. Got a little run with the major league club last year in September. Not much to call home about. Um, but I think out of all of these under the radar, kind of between the margin moves, I think this one's got the most chance for success. To be honest, like especially in a bullpen that's kind of, I don't want to say lacking, but it needs some more pieces. Um,
Yeah, I think that was my biggest thing when I was looking at the Orioles this year is, so much of your bullpen is guys that are going up and down because they pitched 3 days in a row and you need to give them rest and stuff like that. We saw that with Nick Vespi last year, right? Like
yeah.
he'd get up and then he'd go down again and get up and go down again. He's actually done that like the last 2 years, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just so much of managing a bullpen is being able to have guys in AAA ready to come up. And so when I was looking at it this year, I was like, well, okay, who do we have that can do that? Because I think Nick Vespi is pretty much towards the end of his options, so he can't be that up and down guy anymore. Well, here you go, a guy that, like you said, he only came up in September last year. He's probably got a ton of options left.
Yeah.
So he can be an up and down relief pitcher for the team.
Yeah. And that's like kind of been his career is up and down. I mean, he's all over every level. And some years he would do really, really well, other years not as much. He got a lot of run as a starter, and I think that the Yankees identified that and were like, I don't know. But 27 games as a reliever, 34 innings, a 1.32 ERA. It's pretty good.
Those numbers are good. I like that.
That's pretty good. I think again, just don't expect anything of him. He's a 29-year-old prospect with very, very limited service time. He pitched in 4 games last year with the Yankees. Um,
I
yeah,
think another move, the one that's right underneath that on our list here, Caleb Ort, which is the most recent one. This happened yesterday. Got him for cash considerations from the Phillies. Had been pitching before that with the Red Sox. I'll say what terrifies me about this move is the first thing I saw as soon as it happened was people posting the video of in the ninth inning last year. You had um, Cedric Mullins hitting a grand slam off of him, and then you had later on, I think the year before, you had Gunnar Henderson hit an absolute nuke off of him and into the center of Fenway Park, and I was like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good, you
yeah,
know. But I think a lot of this is about organizational depth. I think
yeah.
I don't know Caleb Ort's career well enough to say that he definitely has a ton of options or not. I think it's all about depth in that bullpen, and Elias wants as many options as he possibly can. He might not make the team after spring training. He
I,
might. I don't know. We'll
he'd
see.
really have to show something. Last 2 years, pitched around 20-ish games. Never had an ERA lower than a 6.2.
Yeah, that's not
Just
going to fly.
yeah, just a lot of runs. I mean, he's striking out. I mean, he strikes out guys as a reliever should, but I mean, he would really need to find something like the lab would need to turn a miracle out for him to make the roster, I think, or we just need some kind of depth. But yeah, and that I think that's going to be the same thing, like you said, organizational depth with the other guys. Tyler Nevin, welcome back, Tyler Nevin. Another guy who just did not have a good year last year with the Tigers. 200
200
batting
batting
average.
average. Oof.
Yeah, 200 batting average. Not a lot to say about his peripherals either. Like he wasn't unlucky or anything. He just was very, very mediocre. Nick Maton, another Detroit guy, middle infielder.
The one
Again,
thing Nick Maton has going for him is people say that he has got some raw power. His average is not there, but apparently he can hit a ball out of any ballpark easily.
yeah,
So that's
I
the one
mean,
thing that maybe he'll, Elias is seeing in him.
yeah, came up in the Phillies organization and was a fine. I mean, he's a fine utility guy. Play a role on a team. Last year with the Tigers, he batted a $173, 593 OPS, very low impact on a really bad Tigers team though that kind of gave up halfway through the season. On the Phillies, I mean, in a full season, not a full season, excuse me, played 52 games in 2021, 256 batting average. Like there was something there. I don't know. There might be something there. I
Well,
don't really.
and here's the thing with all these guys. Last year, Mike Elias got really, really lucky with the Ryan O'Hearn deal that we all sat there and scratched our heads at, and we're like, who? And then they made him into something. You never know. It's possible that one of these guys is a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people freak out when they see these moves going into spring training because they think like, oh, these are guys that are going to that are going to block like Jackson Holiday and stuff. That's what I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, Jackson Holiday's now not going to make the opening day roster. Look, you got more infielders and things like
Yeah.
that. There is zero guarantee that these guys make the team. I think
Right.
Elias just wants as many options as possible going into spring training so that if he finds that diamond in the rough, like a Ryan O'Hearn, hey, there you go. More organizational depth. And for Ryan O'Hearn, you have a guy that now can platoon with Ryan Mountcastle and DH. And
Yeah.
sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But you got these guys for cash consideration. So, like, what's the risk,
Yeah. So we might need to get a few more guys for cash considerations. Hopefully, a lot more cash. Kyle Bradish is going to start the season on the IL with a UCL sprain. He is treating that UCL sprain with cortisone injections. It's a pretty lengthy process. It can be up to 4 or 5 shots every 2 or 3 weeks. Some guys it works, some guys it doesn't. Actually, the head coach at McDaniel was telling me about guys that he's seen take that same injection, and he said it's like 50-50 as to whether it works. And if it works, he'll come back, come right off the IL. Hopefully we'll pitch like he did last year. If it doesn't work, he's going to need TJ.
What's the if it works, let's say everything goes perfectly.
Yeah.
What is the timeline? Do you know?
2 months, 2
Okay.
months, 3 months. It's like 2 weeks after that last shot. Depends how many he's taken.
This was the biggest gut punch for me
Oh yeah,
because, and I think for most people,
big time.
Kyle Bradish came in and I was so excited because I called my shot last year. I said, this guy, I think everyone was talking Grayson Rodriguez, but I said, I think this guy's going to lead that Orioles rotation. And he did in a big way. I mean, top 5 in Cy Young voting.
Yeah.
Had the first sub 3 ERA for an Orioles pitcher since Mike Mussina.
Yeah.
Had just an absolute baller of a year. And, he just right before this got announced had been made the MLB top 100. And everyone was talking about, oh, now that Corbin Burns is on the team, like if Burns had been on the team last year, him and Bradish would have the best 1-2 punch ERA in all of baseball. And you were so excited for that. I mean, you looked at that lineup and you said, no one's beating us. And to lose Bradish for a significant amount of time now is an absolute gut punch.
Yeah,
Um,
you just had to be looking forward to that three-headed monster at the front of the front of the rotation, and just for him to go down, and it just all happened at once. All these injuries just all happened at once. It was like, how was this kind of kept under wraps? Like, especially like the Means thing being a month behind.
yeah,
Um,
so John Means, apparently going back to what kept him out of the playoffs last year, he had that elbow flare up where he had Tommy John surgery. Apparently that pushed back his winter workout schedule enough where he is a month behind where he should be to make the opening day roster. It doesn't sound like the organization is too concerned by that. It's just he's expected to come in end of April, beginning
yeah,
of May. The thing that scares me about that is that you just still I don't think we've seen enough of John Means after he came back from Tommy John surgery to say like, oh yeah, he's back. John
yeah.
Means business is back, right? It was sort of one of those like, oh, okay, you can see he's sort of getting back, and then suddenly it was like, oh, he's not starting in the playoffs
I
because he's hurt again.
I think that he exceeded expectations as a pitcher coming back from Tommy John surgery at the end of last year.
Yeah, I
And
would
I
agree
think
with that.
that was all that we needed, right? And then I will never try to like talk like I know the single first thing about having Tommy John surgery done. But you got a whole off season, you can rehab on your own. Just to have a flare up, like it's just tough. It's just tough. And I mean, that's gotta be gut wrenching for him too. I mean, he's probably
Yeah.
taken more of this like on his shoulders than anybody else's. Like all
Well,
he
the
wants to
fact
do.
that he throughout the whole process has had to sit on the bench,
Yeah.
be there with the guys. I think that's kind of showing John Means' character. Like, yeah, he had to go away a lot for like rehab and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But any chance that he had to be on the bench, to be with the guys, to help coach,
Yeah.
it showed how much this team means to him. And if you follow his wife on Twitter, like it's very clear that
Yeah.
they love this
Oh yeah.
organization. They love Baltimore. And it sucks for him. I like you said, I don't think anyone's taking this harder than John Means is. Um, but I'm hopefully optimistic that we have him back come May and that everything is
Yeah.
fine. I see a lot of people panicking and saying, like, well, this means John Means is cooked. He's done. I don't think you can say that. I think that the medicine surrounding Tommy John has improved so much over the years that it's very unlikely that Tommy John is a career killer. I think it's just you have to be patient.
Yeah. And it's
And
like
and
like
and
you
we're so
said.
excited about this team that a lot of us aren't patient. So
Yeah.
it's hard.
Absolutely. And like you said, like the medicine surrounding these guys, like this is top of the line stuff. This
Yeah.
is like cutting edge treatments, best doctors in the world. Like these guys are going to be fine. They're doing everything in their power. That's a cool thing about like players being more open about what day to day life is like as a player. Could be injuries, whatever. Like it's really cool to hear that kind of stuff and like the routines that they go through. Like I know I learned a lot. Like even just as a coach, just hearing these guys talk about their routines and what their rehab can be like it's nuts. Like it's gonna be fine. Same thing with Gunner, like oblique soreness, like it's just overuse from gearing up for the season, just swinging a lot. Like he's gonna be fine.
Yeah, that
Um,
was one that like I was listening to Section 336 today. They put it best. They're like this injury screams like you just went a little too hard with your
yeah,
off-season prep.
absolutely.
And so
And
I
like,
don't expect him to miss any time from this. Like he's just going to be a little delayed getting into
yeah,
spring training. And honestly, Gunnar Henderson, rookie of the year. Do I think that's going to hurt him for the season? Absolutely not.
no, he's gonna be fine. And like it just shows what kind of player he is, right? Like training that hard in the off season that you kind of like tweak your oblique.
Yeah.
Basayo, Samuel Basayo, stress fracture in his throwing elbow. This is a weird one. This is a weird one because there's really not much you can do for it. You just
Yeah.
kind of have to rest it. You have to let it be. So he's still swinging right now, but he's not thrown for the foreseeable future. We have April written down here, but I would say closer to May.
Yeah, that
honestly.
April comes from Rock Kabako. That's
Yeah,
the
and I don't
game.
think he's lying about that. But just the way that elbow injuries are, gotta be uber cautious about them. Give him a
And
little
the
bit more
nice
time.
thing too is with Basayo, he wasn't gonna make the major league team this year anyways.
No, yeah,
He's still a good year at least, if not 2 years away
yeah.
from the major leagues. Um, so it's more just you worry for him developmentally. Does this throw off his development timetable? But it's not something that's gonna destroy the team this year. Hey,
By the
there's still
way,
a guy catching named Adley Rutschman, who today
yeah,
got named the 19th best player in all of baseball, which I
yeah.
think might even be a little too low. So we're okay in the catcher department.
By the way, this kid's 19 years old. His body's not even done growing yet.
Yeah, I think too a stress fracture, kind of like what we just said with Gunnar Henderson. This shows he might have been going a little too hard with his offseason prep.
Dude, his bones aren't fully developed. No wonder he's got a stress fracture. He's playing like the highest level of baseball you can, and he's doing it very well. It's crazy to me. He's
Well,
nine.
and Basayo, I think the tough thing is people are really excited about Basayo. I
Yeah,
know I am because
absolutely.
I think I mean he's already ranked what is like the 17th best prospect in all of baseball at
Yeah,
19.
yeah, and
You're
depending on the
telling me that
publication, it could be
16
high.
guys ahead of him might not graduate to the major leagues, and suddenly come next year we have a number one overall prospect once again, like for the fourth year in a
Yeah,
row. I think that's incredibly possible. But, he's still a couple years away, so the stress fracture sucks, but it's not an immediate impact,
yeah,
and like you said, he's still growing, he's still developing, um, he will still be a good player after this. It's just, you're not gonna see him as much at spring training.
absolutely.
Um,
So, with all these injuries, what are the Orioles doing? Making another move, another trade, free agent signing?
I will tell you what I would love to have happen, but I don't know how likely it is. I would love to see them make a free agent signing with one of these big pitchers still left on free agency, which there is a pretty hefty list.
Yeah,
But I would like to see the signing be like a 1 or 2 year contract. That's what a lot of the experts are saying, that these guys like Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and whatnot probably need to do. They probably need to make a like a 1 year signing with like a player option for a second year to reset the market, because the Otani deal really kind of blew up the free agency market this year, and it's really hard to get a good gauge of what a good free agency signing contract looks like
yeah,
for like normal players. And so if that's the case, and as we get closer and closer to opening day, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of those guys make those kind of deals.
yeah,
I would love for the Orioles to go out and get a guy like Jordan Montgomery. I think he
yeah.
would fit the team really well. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. I
That'd
think
be
it's
fun.
difficult. I think it's pretty telling that there keeps being rumors out there that the Orioles or the Yankees are making continuous offers to Blake Snell, and he still
Yeah,
isn't signing.
yeah,
So I just don't know that that's going to happen. I think a much more likely thing that's going to happen is we have another trade. I think
yeah,
the pieces are there to make a trade. Like I said, the Jesus Luzardo option is one that a lot of people are talking about. I think Ken Rosenthal was the one that said, "Hey, just because the Orioles signed Corbin Burns doesn't mean they're not still going to
yeah,
sign Dylan Cease. They might still make a trade for Dylan Cease if the White Sox drop their asking price."
yeah,
I could see that. I think it's going to be if they do make a move like that, it's going to be a clear indication to us, the fans, that yes, the Kyle Bradish injury is exactly as bad as we all think it
yeah.
is.
Yeah, so just a couple names that are still out in the market, other than like the big ticket names, other than Snell and Jamont. I think a good fit, and my buddy Nick has been preaching this one for a couple weeks now. Hyunjin Ryu, I think would be a pretty good fit. And Michael Lorenzen, who just came off a career high year in innings. Those two could be very viable options, and they're not going to break the bank. Ryu signed a 4-year, $80 million with the Blue Jays 4 years ago.
I think Rio just signed back in the Korean League today.
Did he really?
I'm pretty sure he's going to be the highest paid player in the Korean League today, but I think he's going back to Korea.
With the Hanwha Eagles.
Yep. You were busy working, so you missed that one.
Yeah. Well, disregard me. I still think Lorenzen could be a fun option.
Lorenzen's a name I've heard thrown around a lot, and I think he would make sense. I think he's an option that is better than Cole Irvin. And that's not a knock on Cole Irvin because I really like Cole Irvin. I just think if we're back to that option, like the roller coaster of emotions where we went, our rotation was going to be Burns, Bradish, Rodriguez, Means, Kremer, and you said that's a gauntlet. To now it's going to be Burns, Rodriguez, Kremer, Irvin, Wells, Irvin. That's suddenly like a big drop off.
Yeah.
So if you can get one more guy in there to shore that up, even though yes, it's going to be 1 month without John Means. Yes, it's going to be, if everything goes right, 2 months without Kyle Bradish. I still like the idea of signing a guy like that I think is a good, solid 4th, 5th position starter.
Yeah.
And then if those guys come back, great, because then you have him in the 5th position, and he's still, I'd say he's probably better than Kremer. So yeah, I think that's a great option.
Well, it's really fun that baseball's back, huh?
Yeah. We haven't even gotten into the notes from around the league. We've hinted at the Ohtani stuff. I think we can have a really fun discussion about that Ohtani deal.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten into some of the position battles that are going to go on this year.
Yeah.
The giant question everyone's asking is, will Jackson Holiday break camp? We haven't gotten into that yet. So I'm just really excited, Jack, for this season. Expectations are high and getting higher every day, I feel like. And all I can do is count down the days to March 28th.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be talking some AL East breakdowns in the coming weeks, what to look for against the in-division rivals, some of the big splashes made around the league. I know it's tough recording our first episode on February 20th, the whole offseason of things that happened. So we won't spend too much time on the other stuff. We'll keep it mostly Orioles, but it's fun to look around at the competition, see what's going on around the league. But yeah, definitely looking forward to making our mock lineups in a couple weeks.
Mock lineups and season predictions and preseason awards. It's going to be a lot of fun going forward.
Maybe get a couple best bets in there for the preseason.
Ooh, yeah. I'll tell you this. One last thing I'm going to say before we head out. I went ahead and made some of the same bets that I made last year that hit over under for win totals, Orioles to make the playoffs. What sucks is people know that the Orioles are good now.
Yeah, the books.
So the payout on those bets are not as good.
Yeah, the books caught on.
Yeah. Fangraphs still treats us like crap, but everyone else is caught on.
Yeah.
Jack, anything left for the good of the order before we head out for the week?
Nah, man. Happy to be back. Good to talk to you. It's been a while.
Absolutely, man. Good to see you. We'll have to catch up at the yard sometime real soon.
Yes, sir. Hey, go Terror, huh?
Yeah, go Green Terror. My mom's alma mater. Your mom's alma mater.
First game on Friday.
All right. Everyone, look out for that McDaniel College score, all right?
Sure.
And, of course, as always, let's go O's.
Thank you, everybody.
You've been listening to UPod Street, an Orioles podcast by fans for fans. UPod Street is an official Birdland Sports affiliate. Directly support the pod by purchasing UPod Street or other Orioles merchandise using the link birdlandsports.com/UPod Street. Get 10% off your order when you use the code UPod Street. Follow us on Twitter @UPod Street and @JackBain20. UPod Street is also on Facebook and YouTube. And you can listen to the show on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. On whatever platform you listen, please subscribe, rate the pod, and leave a review. If you leave a review, we may even read it on the show. We'll see you next week, and of course, let's go O's.